Hey there, are you a travel creator who is beyond trend chasing and beyond viral views? You've already made it. Your content is working. You are getting brand deals. But now you're kind of like a deer in headlights. Well, it might be because you are treating your travel content creation like an influencer and not a business owner. Over here, I've created the only business building community for established travel content creators who need to save time and create a bigger impact online. We're building this together and you're totally invited. There's literally no community for successful travel content creators who want to build actual businesses and not just chase followers. The first round of this program is very limited to a small number of creators because I want to keep it that way. We're building this together. You literally get one-on-one personalized support with me for a really good deal, if I don't say so myself. To get in on the travel creator business plan, you're going to need to send me a message on Instagram and I will send you all the details. Are you everyone and their aunt? I know you are because you probably have thought about starting a podcast before, and I can't blame you. It is one of my most favorite ways that I get to do marketing and networking for my business, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it for any creator who wants to make their content creation into a business. It's one of the best things I do. And because it's one of the best things I do, I have brought in one of the best. So this is David, and he is going to be deep diving with us storytelling, podcasting, and how we can monetize outside of just typical podcast creation. So without further ado, I'm kind of fangirling. David is here joining us. He's a pretty big deal in the podcast travel space. So enough of me. Let's get into it.
My name is David Brody, and I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Voyescape. We are a podcast network, so a group of some of the best travel podcasts in the world that we've brought together. And in addition to heading up the network of shows, I've also been a longtime travel podcaster myself. I started a show called Travel in 10-minute clips of things to see and do around the world that I've been doing since really the beginning of podcasting back in 2005.
You are the beginning of podcasting. You are the grandfather of podcasting. That is awesome. How did you think of the show idea? Like, would you remember when like that hit you of like, okay, this is a really cool idea? Because of that time when you started the show, when podcasting was not what it is now, or even what it will be in another 10 years, how did you think like, this has to be a podcast? Like, what made you think that?
Well, I totally remember how it started, which is my wife and I had taken a year off to go travel around the world between kind of a career break that we had done in the early 2000s. We'd done some volunteering over with an NGO in Thailand for a while. We had gone all throughout Southeast Asia. And then we arrived in Japan where we had work visas. And my wife landed a job right away working with Hyatt Hotels. And it took me about a month to find a job where I eventually ended up working with the Canadian Embassy. But for that first month, I'm just kind of hanging out in Tokyo and cruising around. We were living in Ginza, and we were probably only about 2 blocks away from what was, again, speaks to how old I am, one of the first Apple stores in the world as well in Ginza. Right, it was this super cool, massive new Apple store that had just opened there. So I would go in and check it out every day and play with all the gadget stuff, and podcasting just started to become a thing. So you could play around with the different devices and see what podcasts were. And at the same time, I was out exploring Tokyo every day and saw that so many places had these because language is often a barrier when you're in Tokyo. You're arriving at all these places, and many of them had audio guides that you could get in English explaining all of what you're seeing and doing. And I thought this would make a great podcast. I could start doing like 10-minute kind of clips every day of different things to see and do in Tokyo. And that's essentially how it started, was doing it as 10-minute things to do in the city. And then as our travels continued on, it became 10-minute things to see and do in different places around the world.
Oh my gosh. Were you listening to any podcasts around this time?
Well, there wasn't many. The only, I think, travel podcast that was on the Apple podcast store before mine was one called Amateur Traveler. A guy named Chris Christensen. He's now done he's closing in on almost 1,000 episodes now. He's been doing it as a weekly show since 2005. I was a much lazier podcaster through much of my podcasting career. So I would do a few weekly episodes and then would be a long gap in between the next episode where Chris has been like dedicated every week for 20 years now. So he is one of the most followed and successful travel podcasts out there. And I've been lucky to work with him a bit in my recent podcast network work.
That is crazy. It's crazy. There's so many questions we could talk about in just your knowledge of the podcast space and your own experience having a show. Like, I think you're just a bucket of knowledge because you have a foot in both camp. But I want to know a little bit about your own podcast. So I am so impressed that you can do it in 10 minutes, provide all of this information, and I don't know how you do it. And I would love to know how you can find this information, whether it's about like a specific place within a place or a broader destination, or a broader conversation around a destination, and how you effectively and like succinctly whittle down the most important parts of it. Basically, this is getting at storytelling. Like, how are you taking all this information and making it into a 10-minute episode?
For sure. Well, I think, very, very consciously settled on that time frame when I first started it, because I can even see then, like the behavior in terms of how people consume podcasts. It was often, in Tokyo when they were on the train, right? So often it would be between destinations. You got a short ride, or at the gym, and they're looking for something just kind of quick, actionable, practical. So we thought, a short show would really be most effective for that. I will say also, in the last 2 years, I've brought on a co-host, and we do struggle very much with the 10-minute timeline between the two of us now, because having two hosts is a lot harder, but often we'll break up our episodes into, for example, over the last few weeks, we've done 3 episodes on Berlin where we recorded it all in one day and broken it up into 10-minute segments. But we really look at each episode as, first of all, kind of the inspiration of why to go to a place, and then really actionable, practical advice in the second 5 minutes, the last half of the podcast, where to stay, what to do, where to eat, and try and keep it kind of quick hits and kind of hopefully unique and compelling places that people haven't heard of before, or a bit more off the tourist trail sometimes.
Yes. When I listen, I get secondhand stress, and like, we have like a 10-minute timeline. Like, they can't banter for too long. We have to like,
we even say in our show description now 10-minute ish, because we don't keep so well to the 10-minute timeline anymore.
I still stress. I'm like, all right, let's go. It's so funny. Okay. What does the research process look like? Like, especially because there is so much travel podcasting, storytelling content, and there's so many ways you can talk about a specific location. And so I'm curious, what does your research process look like? But also then, how can you talk about a place that's been produced, like so much content has been produced about Paris, for example, or even Berlin, like you were covering recently.
Yeah.
How can you find a way to talk about that is different than what everybody else has done?
For sure. Well, I think, first of all, I'm fortunate in that my co-host, is a full-time travel writer. He's been to 140 countries around the world, and he is, constantly on the road. He really doesn't have a home base. He is always traveling, and has been for 15 plus years. I shouldn't say he does have a home base, but he's very, very seldom there. Although have not traveled nearly as extensively as Tim, have a ton of travel experience myself as well. I'm up over 50 countries in the last year. Just last year alone, I traveled to 28 countries. So we start with our firsthand experience, right? And it's, often places both of us have been, and usually one of us has been quite recently, or on the odd time where I've ever done episodes, particularly prior to having Tim as a co-host, where I hadn't been there myself. It's finding a trusted collaborator, somebody on the ground there. I sometimes would tap into local writers, guides, reputable media who's been there before, sometimes tourism boards, and sometimes concierges at like, if there was a really cool hotel and they had a cool concierge there, I did a couple of episodes where I would tap into them, and they were good sources of information as well. So starting off with that, like, trusted firsthand experience of your own whenever you can, or a really trusted collaborator, and then layering in, credible sources. Again, looking for, information from people on the ground, tourism boards, whether that's another thing that's been incredibly helpful for us in episodes over the last 18 or 24 months has been layering in AI and using that to, we've got some hyper specific prompts that help us get like very detailed notes on the places that we're talking about, based on the types of things we like to talk about in destinations. That certainly before Tim and I get together to record, each of us does a couple of hours of research. We gather our notes, and then we're recording, 4, 5, 6 episodes in a day based on that research that we've gone and done, looking for kind of unique hooks that really make those destinations stand out as well. What are those 1 or 2 special things, those illustrative anecdotes of things that we've done in the destinations that can really help bring it to life as well.
Yeah. Wow. I think asking concierge is a genius idea. Have you just like walked into the hotel and found them and just asked them, or do you like reach out to them beforehand?
In one case, I wanted to do, it was a period of time where Vegas was particularly becoming a big destination. I think they had a big event going there. And I'm like, I haven't been to Vegas recently. I haven't done a good episode there. What's the coolest hotel in town? Called them up and said, hey, I wanted to interview your concierge about this, about what's new and what's, compelling in Vegas. And he was an awesome guest. So that worked out really well.
Wow. It's just so cool. Like, and also like today, thinking about walking into a hotel and asking to interview someone working there right now is just a crazy thought. But they are the people who know. They are the living blog posts of best things to do in that location. That's so awesome. Okay. You've been podcasting for a long time, and there have only become more and more and more travel shows. And especially with like your expertise of having a network of travel shows, these are a few loaded questions that we could spend a whole episode talking about. But what are some of the biggest changes you've seen from the podcast you started in 2005 to now, how it has changed with the way that podcasting has changed? Any like major shifts you've noticed, or really is it all still the same? Like, okay, we're just researching a place and telling a story, and that's really all that podcasting needs to be. I would love to know your thoughts on how it's changed since 2005.
For sure. And I would say a lot of changes, but probably the biggest one was back in 2005. I mean, it was still a very niche medium, right? Back then, a lot of people, when you told them you had a podcast, would kind of scratch their head and not be entirely sure what you were talking about. They'd kind of vaguely heard of it, but didn't really know where it is. Where I would say, particularly in the last 5 years, I mean, podcasts have very much become mainstream, right? I mean, 80% plus of Americans have listened to one. Yeah. I mean, if you look at, I think it's for 18 to 24-year-olds now, the latest stat I was seeing is that their podcast consumption is equal to their television watching now. So it is like very, very much a mainstream medium, right? I mean, people are spending on average in North America about 4 hours a day with digital audio, in terms of their media consumption habits. So it is very much a mainstream medium and very much has exploded. For sure, that means there's a lot more podcasts out there, but also a lot more listeners too, and a lot more people tuning in and a lot more potential audience for shows as well.
I just need you guys to know that podcasting is really at its infancy, and it is not too oversaturated. It might seem like there is a podcast for everything and for everyone, but I found a niche that there wasn't a podcast in, which means you can too.
It's interesting, the impact video has had on podcasting. In the early days of podcasting, for a while, video became a big part of it. Like Apple used to natively integrate video into their app for a while. Then they didn't, right? So video kind of faded out and wasn't a big part of podcasting for a long time. Now, of course, it's a huge part of the medium and a lot of the fastest growing shows. And a lot of the, consumption of podcasts happens as much on YouTube as it does anywhere. So, video is definitely becoming a big component, although most of my show is still very much audio first, and most of the shows on our network are. And I do think there are some unique things about the audio part of podcasting and what it can provide as well.
Yeah. Video, it has certainly exploded in terms of podcasts. Everybody has a video you can watch in the podcast. And I still find it a little crazy because I'm like, am I supposed to be watching these people talk, or am I supposed to be listening to them? I don't know. But I heard recently from somebody, and I can't remember who, which is not super helpful, but They were talking about how, okay, let's say you have a podcast and you're thinking about doing video. It's like, it's not something you have to do. Like if you were mentoring somebody who wanted to start a travel podcast, would you encourage them to do video?
I mean, it is a very different beast and a different type of show
Yeah.
if you're going to incorporate video. I would say if you've got the wherewithal to keep up a video podcast, for sure, there's advantage in doing it. But it is a whole different workflow and a whole different set of
Yeah.
requirements and editing and everything else that you've got to layer in as well. And, I think quite different. Quite different workflow to have a successful video podcast versus an audio podcast.
Yeah, it's like really like learning a whole new skill. Whereas I
For
think
sure.
people think, oh, I can just record this and put it somewhere in video and it will like do the same thing as all these massive shows with video. And like, it's not the same thing.
Not
Not the
necessarily
same
the
thing.
case. Yeah.
Not the same thing. What I think is so cool about podcasting for creators is that it is actually quite a low barrier of entry. And I don't think that's a really common belief, but it can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. You can record in your pajamas, you can record on your phone, you can rent a studio, you can do just uploading audio. I wouldn't, however, recommend starting with video just because it's one more element you want to get right or like make perfect. So just focus on audio quality and upload that RSS feed to a YouTube channel because as we know, YouTube is a search engine and it just helps get you more views. I have subscribers on YouTube and I don't pay them enough attention. So that will change soon, but you can make this as simple or as complicated as you want. Just a reminder that you became a travel creator to travel, not to spend 12 hours in a cafe in Croatia, hunched over your laptop in total shrimp mode, wondering if your latest post is actually going to hit. Knowing how to create good content and knowing how to run a content creation business are two completely different skills, and absolutely nobody is talking about it. Well, except me. The Travel Creator Business Plan is the only business building community in the world for travel creators who want to move into business mode and not chase the next shot mode. Every month, you get one brand new business system delivered straight to the community. You also get monthly co-working sessions and Q&A sessions, as well as a private community of other travel creators who are building real businesses. Courtney, one of our members, says, "You achieved more with me in 4 to 6 weeks than I did in 6 months with other programs. You gave me permission to chase not only what lights me up, but a business roadmap that matches my goals, not some cookie cutter process." And Courtney, I love having you in there. So if you are a travel creator who is done learning how to be a creator and ready to learn how to be a business owner, the Travel Creator Business Plan is for you. I'd love to see you inside, and I will leave a link to join us below in the show notes. What makes a good podcast, a good travel podcast? Because there are so many out there, so many. I wish I knew actually how many travel show podcasts there were. But when you are looking at the shows that you have on your network, what are you looking for or thinking like, this is really a great show?
Yeah, for us, I mean, we kind of started the Travel Podcast Network with a clear mission, which is to help people travel more and travel better, right? And so looking for shows that really help people achieve that, right? So I would say we skew towards more informational kind of content for sure. Practical, actionable advice, I think you would find on all of our podcasts across the network. I think like the best of travel podcasts are ones that have a clear sense of place, ones that can bring in the sights, the sounds, even the smells come to life in the audio content. You've got somebody who's really able to bring that experience to life with a clear kind of narrative arc and some great illustrative anecdotes of their experience in the destination. I think make the best shows for sure, and something that leaves you at the end of the episode either with, wow, that's something I hadn't thought of before, that's going to be super helpful to me in planning my next trip, or really leaves them with a sense of like, I want to go there, and gets them excited about that next trip as well.
I am interrupting this interview to let you know that Armchair Explorer is Marie's favorite travel podcast, and it's one I love too. I also really like National Park After Dark. I love the more like crazy sort of adventure stories, more so than different tips about different locations. However, Both I have listened to, and I think the tips on different locations, similar to what David does in his own podcast, are incredibly helpful when I am planning to go to that specific destination. So I feel like different podcasts have their different time and place, and it kind of just depends what I'm in the mood for. Do I want to learn something or do I want to be entertained by a crazy story? On the other side of the coin, podcasting mistakes in the travel world you see all the time that you don't understand why people don't realize it yet or haven't realized it. I would love to know that too.
Well, I guess two that maybe come to mind. I mean, one is that you see a lot of people who are super ambitious. They go out on a trip around the world. They start their podcast. They're going to do it weekly, and they get through about 3 episodes, and you never hear another one
Sounds about
again.
right.
Yeah, there are many of those. And I mean, when you talk about how many travel podcasts out there, there's thousands of them, but there are probably only hundreds that actually are consistently continuing to put out content over more than a 3-month or a 6-month period, right? I mean, there are so many that kind of pop up and then flame out as quickly as they've popped up again. So I guess really making sure you've created your show in a way that it can extend beyond a single trip, and thinking about how to do that. The other thing is, like, I think people often think, particularly when it comes to the travel as a topic in podcasts, that you've got to be constantly traveling to be able to do it successfully. And over the last year, I've met a lot of travel podcasters around the world. One of the most successful ones that I've met, who has one of the most well-listened shows, he's now at like 450 episodes on Paris. Hyper local, hyper specific. All he talks about is Paris. He lives in Paris, of course, and he's been going for years now, doing a weekly show about nothing but Paris. And because he has specialized and been hyper focused in the content that he's done, he's built up not only a great online following, but he's been able to make a great business out of it. I think he's now got 6 or 7 people working for him who do city tours of Paris, and his only sales channel for his entire business is the podcast. It's the only place he advertises. It's the only place kind of driving people to his tours. I should shout about a great show called The Earful Tower, Oliver G there in Paris. So I highly recommend it if you're going to Paris. Not only a great podcast, but his tours are awesome as well.
Wow. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of, even in the content creation space on social media specifically, a lot of what's been doing really well is super hyper local content, which I think is really interesting. Because I think there's too many, or so many creators who just talk about traveling in general. And I think people are really craving knowing more about a specific place somewhat or doing at least a deep dive into a specific place, rather than like, okay, here's what you need to know about Paris one time, this massive city, all this information to know about it is super interesting. Okay, I want to know about storytelling. You've been telling stories for a long time, and I feel as though storytelling has become a buzzword and we don't really know what to do with it anymore because it's like the word of 2025, I think. It's crazy. At least I'm coining it that, but it is all over, and I want to know what advice you might have for like making good storytelling. Like, what's really the basis of it? Do we just need an interesting idea and an interesting person to answer it? Is it more the research? Is it all of the above?
Yeah, I think it is all the above. I do think, all of those components are super important, right? Having a clear sense of place, having, something, a clear narrative arc, something interesting that happens, a discovery, a challenge that makes a great story. Research is a critical component of it, I think, particularly if you're, providing advice to people on things to do, places to go around the world, making sure that, you've thoroughly researched that and have good current up-to-date information. But then I think one of the most important parts of storytelling too is editing, right? Just leaving things out is as important, often more important than what you do include, especially in what we do in a shorter format show. It's for each 10 minutes we air, we definitely record at least 30, 45 minutes probably that gets recorded that we edit it down to.
Yeah. When you're researching, do you always kind of go to like, okay, maybe you love Rick Steves. So you're like, I'm going to go and I want to know what he says about this location. Do you have like those specific resources you always go to, or is it different every single time?
a pretty wide scope of resources, although two that I've always relied on in all my travels, so that it continues to impact the content that I'm putting out as well. Lonely Planet travel guides for many years. I've got like a library of them here at home, so they're often a starting point. When I'm planning out a trip to a destination or when we're talking about it. And then I love Anthony Bourdain and his recommendations for what to see and what to do. His style of travel kind of aligns a lot with my style of travel. So I have often taken his content and his recommendations as kind of inspiration for a starting point to starting to dig into a destination as well.
What's like the craziest thing you've researched about a place that you've actually gone and done? Like maybe you found like a festival or some sort of event or something that you came across when researching a destination and you thought maybe I should do this or maybe not because it's kind of crazy.
Okay, well, a bit of a story comes to mind around this, actually. I'll try to draw not too long on this one, but this was actually what kind of inspired the trip that then inspired my podcast. Was my wife and I were living in Ottawa, Ontario at the time, and we were both talking about wanting to get some international experience and go work abroad for a while, and we kind of been talking about it for a while, but hadn't really done anything. But then we went out for dinner at a Thai restaurant one night near where we were living, and started talking to the waiter, and he was telling us about this amazing festival that happens every year in Thailand, kind of their New Year's festival. It doesn't take place on our New Year calendar. I think it's in April or March or April, one of the two. It's called Songkran, and it's this part of the Buddhist calendar, kind of where kind of the renewal New Year festival that happens. And in addition to its religious and historical significance, it's also just a massive party and like the biggest water fight in the world, because traditionally people would go to Buddhist temples and have water poured over them as part of the purification festival or ritual that happens during this festival. But now that's been converted into everybody buys massive water guns, water balloons, and the streets turn into these massive water fights for like 2 weeks. And as he was telling us about it, it sounded like so much fun that over the course of the dinner, we decided to quit our job, sell our house, put everything in storage, go travel around the world for a year. And this festival was happening like 2 weeks later. We did all those things in about 2 weeks, and we were on the road and made it to the festival 2 weeks later. So
That's the
yeah.
definition of spontaneity. Oh my gosh. What an epic story. Whoa.
That was the trip that we then ended up, later living and working in Japan, and kind of started the podcast from as well.
Wow. That was better than any sort of answer I could have expected you to give to that question. That was really like let's just do it. Like a fun, what's the worst that could happen? That's so fun. It's so awesome.
The perfect time to the pre-kids, and we were kind of just at the stage in our career where both of us could take some time off, and
not responsible for anybody yet. Just
totally.
That's the time to do it. Exactly.
Just our house and car that we had to get sold in 2 weeks, and
I mean that's
find somewhere to put everything in storage.
That's very stressful. I had before, like I went on a massive road trip living in like a roof tent on my car. I had a whole year to prepare, and that felt like never enough time. So that's insane. I can't even process what that looks like. That's so fun. Wow. Where was okay, sidebar, your favorite place you went to during that year of traveling?
During that year of traveling, wow, there's so many, but it probably would either be Cambodia, because Cambodia was just such a unique experience at the time. I mean, we were going to Angkor Wat, and this was not long after the Civil War had ended in Cambodia, so not a lot of tourists had been in there yet. And it was just such an incredible, unique place to see. That was definitely a highlight. And then Tokyo. I mean, Tokyo was such an incredible city to live in for a few months. I mean, it inspired the podcast. And I mean, if we had stayed there since then, I could have easily been doing a weekly show about nothing but Tokyo. There's just so much to see and do in the city.
Okay, I have a flip side of that question that not enough people ask on these travel podcasts, but where would you not recommend somebody to go? And you don't have to give like a harsh reason why, but we all have our places that we're like, thought that looked cooler online, and you go and it's like, not my favorite thing. And sometimes places just call to other people. And there's many places I've visited that I've thought, I have heard nothing but good things about this place. And I go and I'm like, I don't understand. It's just not for me. And I don't like that it's not for me because everybody loves it and I don't want to be that person that doesn't love it. But I'm curious if that's happened to you and if you'd be willing to share where you would not send a family or friend.
There's places where I wouldn't go at moments of time just because of circumstances and what's
Yeah.
happening in the country at the time. But
Mhm.
other than that, like there really is like nowhere that I've been that I wouldn't go back to. I think I've been able to find something that I've loved in every destination that we've gone to
Okay, I think I'm a bad
around the
traveler
world.
then.
But I mean,
Yeah.
there's always, there's places where you have, health issues, things come up. I remember getting Norwalk virus in Palm Springs and had the worst 5 days of travel probably of my life in Palm Springs of all places,
Oh,
with my kids who they were sick, we were sick, everybody was just terribly, terribly ill. But I would still go back. Like it's still a cool place and there's things to
that's
see
so
and
funny.
do. And Coachella is not far from there. I'd love to go back and see that or
Okay,
whatever.
fantastic. Okay, you're just a happy traveler. Maybe I'm grumpy. That's so funny. All right, I'm gonna get some hate for this, but I've been instructed by my producer, Maria, to really tell the people some of the places I have been that I would not recommend. I will give you two. The first one is Mount Rushmore. Um, it looks like it looks on the internet, and it's pretty underwhelming. I think I actually had more fun researching on history.com when I was standing below Mount Rushmore to brush up on my Mount Rushmore knowledge. I don't believe it is the most amazing place. I think it's cool. What I think is cooler are the Black Hills that are around it. Far more beautiful, far less people, far less talked about. So add that to your list, but also don't because it's definitely a hidden gem. And if you do go, don't tell too many people about it. But I would have to say, save your coin. Don't go to Mount Rushmore. It's insane. Another place that was not my favorite, and this is gonna get me some hate, I think. But I'll keep it real with you because this was just my lived experience, and I am willing to go back to change my mind, was Porto, Portugal. Was not my favorite place. I don't know what it was about it. I don't know. I can't pinpoint it, but something when I was there, I was just like, this is not doing it for me. I have a feeling it's because I was spending a lot of time in European cities that had like this insane architecture and like in just mind-boggling architecture. Then when I went to Porto, I was like, okay, cool, different architecture, but not as insane as I have previously been seeing. And I honestly think that was my problem. I was just seeing way too much amazing stuff. And then I went to Porto and it wasn't my favorite. I also didn't like the port wine, but I thought like it was pretty, the river and everything, but it wasn't for me at that time. So I am willing to go back and give it another chance. Please don't hate me for that, but I tried to explain why it wasn't my favorite. I won't go into that much more detail about Mount Rushmore. It doesn't deserve it. I would love to know about how you have marketed your show over all of these years of it being around because I know podcast marketing can be so, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people have different thoughts on how it think it should be done. Like we talked about, so many podcasts pop up, and I have known creators who this year alone, several who have started podcasts, and then recently I just went back and I was like, oh, would love to listen. Done. Like, don't
We're
do it
done. Yeah.
anymore. And I think it's because one, at least from my observation, they're trying to do all the things. They're making all the social media content. They've made the web page. They've like done it all. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. And like in an ideal state, awesome. But you just got to make the audio file and then you can get good at that and then make the other thing. So I'd love to know um what you've done because I mean, digital marketing has completely changed since 2005, and what that's looked like for your show.
I think a few things. I mean, one of the unique things about podcasts is the ability to kind of optimize them for distribution everywhere, right? So, I mean, making sure your podcast is showing up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, all those various channels for sure. I mean, vast majority of downloads are going to come through two channels, which, well, three really now. YouTube, Apple, and Spotify are really the three big ones. So, making sure those platforms are constantly changing how they recommend shows, how from a search perspective you can show up. So just making sure you really understand those platforms and or optimizing your shows for them, I think is a big part of it. I think networks are an interesting opportunity. We've created one in the travel space, and there's lots of podcast networks that specialize in different verticals, right, where they're bringing together multiple shows and kind of cross promoting all the shows on the network across the other shows, and also offering advertisers the opportunity to show up on multiple shows in a similar topic area and that reach similar listeners. So I think once you reach a certain stage in your growth and have a big enough audience, those can be an interesting opportunity in terms of marketing your podcast as well. And then one of the most effective ways is what we're doing right now, appearing on other podcasts. That's where you're going to find people who are active podcast listeners. So it certainly, is one of the most effective ways of helping promote your own show is appearing on other shows and putting yourself out there as well. There's a great tool. I've shouted these guys out on a few podcasts actually, that I came across as they were just building it out, probably a little over a year ago now, called Pod Pitch. Two guys out of New York who built a really good AI driven tool that helps you pitch yourself out to go appear on other podcasts, and it is super effective. So that's one I would recommend checking out as well if people are looking to expand their show and expand their reach.
Yeah, so if anyone is listening, stop making the Instagram reels and spend your time pitching podcasts to be on.
Well, I mean, something I will say about that is I do think building your social channels is important as well, but don't expect having a strong following on Instagram to necessarily translate to a strong following on your podcast. It's not necessarily going to drive a lot of traffic from one to the other, but what it is going to do is build up another very monetizable platform and something that sponsors and others are going to have interest in addition to your audio content as well. So it makes sense to build, but just don't expect it to necessarily drive your podcast marketing.
Yes. Until those links are clickable on Instagram, I think we are a slave to the SEO on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, which is fun. Speaking of monetizing, or just, I want to kind of paint a picture for people who have a travel podcast or thinking about one of okay, what are other ways I can turn this into a great business income stream? Because not only can you get sponsorships on your podcast, I feel like that's the one people think of the most. What are other ways that you have kind of turned this podcasting in your podcast into a larger business idea?
Yeah, for me, I mean, the way of making it into a viable business over time was the idea of building out a network, aggregating together a bunch of shows, and working together with those creators, where essentially we're going out and we essentially try and identify independent content creators who are doing great travel content, bring together some of the best travel podcasts in the world. Then we go out and help find advertisers who will advertise on those shows, set up their podcast to be able to accept dynamic ads. So where you can insert, pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll ads, or working together with them to do sponsored content on their shows. So finding those advertisers, helping them grow their shows, and then doing a revenue share with multiple different podcasts across the network then. So that's kind of how I've been doing monetization around it, but there's lots of different models. I mean, I thought Oliver's in Paris was one of the most interesting ones I'd seen, where he has really built a business off of his podcast, and where the podcast has become the number one sales channel for that business, right? For the walking tours that he's doing in Paris. So I think thinking about that, what are the types of products or services that you can offer that you can use your content to drive people to and promote as well, rather than just trying to find advertisers who will appear on your show as well.
Totally. And I think especially for the podcasters who are doing specialized or local content, there's so much more opportunity there to reach out to the businesses that already exist in that city or that area to find a way to work with them, which there's just endless opportunities when it comes to that. All right, let's talk about a few other ways to monetize here that we didn't mention in this conversation. We have group tours and trips. We also have memberships. I think communities are becoming such a coveted thing. And by that, I mean people are craving community. And I think it's going to become an even bigger thing in 2026, just from my own personal observation of discourse online. I don't have any sort of real data to back that up. I should probably do an episode on community building just after I do more research on it. But that's just my hunch after being an internet user and seeing the way people are communicating online. Let me know what you think about that and if that feels really like off base, but that's what I'm noticing. So I think bringing people together is an incredible way to do that, whether that is in person or online. Especially if you are in the travel space, it's probably going to be easier to get people online in your virtual community than in your real life community just because of distances and time. Another way to monetize would be having like a high ticket offer, of course, as well as doing like digital products and trying to do affiliate marketing as well. I think affiliate marketing is incredible. It's basically passive income. So those are just a couple more ways that you can make money online as a travel creator. Okay, talking about putting in dynamic content, dynamic ads into podcasts. Does an ad that performs in the mid-roll do better than an ad at the very end of a show or at the very beginning?
It's a good question. I mean, I think from what we're seeing, I mean, certainly pre-roll and mid-roll ads perform better than post-roll ads, not surprisingly, because, you know, even though one of the unique things about podcasts is people do tend to listen to the whole show a lot more so than when consuming other types of content, but there is still some drop off, right? So, you know, obviously having it at the very beginning of the content or in the middle of the content, you're going to reach a little bit larger audience. So those tend to be the more effective ad slots for sure.
I've always been curious. I mean, definitely makes sense about the end because I'm like, there's the 15-second skip button right there for me.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. I don't know, but
and you've already got kind of what you came for by the end of the show often,
totally,
so it's a lot easier to skip through. Yeah.
Totally. Yes, there's like a huge popular mindset podcast I listen to, and the first whole 2 minutes are like ads, and I'm like, okay, let me find the spot where he starts talking.
I mean, looking at like media consumption habits and how people do consume ads in different ad formats, by far podcasts are have like higher completion rates than almost anything else, because the way people are listening, right? It's often in the car, it's often on your bike at the gym. It's not easy to skip through necessarily, right? So right. You know, versus YouTube or elsewhere tends to be a lot easier to skip through the ads. So a lot less of that behavior that happens in podcasting than in other mediums.
Yeah, I think people listen on average like 30 minutes, which is crazy. If you could sit someone down and have them listen to you for 30 minutes, that's like unheard of.
And I think it's something like 80% who typically listen to completion as well, who are listening to like the full podcast. So
I was talking about this with another podcaster, and I said I kind of don't even like to tell people how good podcasting is because I don't want them to find out about how like it's so awesome. Like, go try and convince a social media marketer about starting a podcast. Like, don't do it because it's so great. And one of my favorite things about it, and I'd love to know yours, is that there's not many things in business you can do in 60 minutes or however long you're recording that can cover so many bases. Like right now, I get to network and meet great people in my world. I get to create content. I get to break these pieces up and put it in my newsletter or on social media or whatever. There's just not many other things you can do that have that such variety. But I would love to know some of your favorite things about like why podcasting. And if you, I don't know if you've ever run into creators and maybe at the beginning of your podcasting career, trying to convince people why podcasting should be something they should focus on.
Yeah, well, I think you've hit the nail on the head on some of the reasons. I mean, for sure, part of it is you get this kind of anchor piece of content for your brand that you can then break up in so many different ways, right? And use on different social channels, repurpose over time. It also, you know, versus any other social channel, you know, you put something on Instagram, great, you've got it in this one one channel. And as that changes, the algorithm there changes, you're radically impacted by that. Versus podcasting, you put out an episode and, all of our shows are distributed in, I think it's something like 200 plus podcasting services that all of our episodes go out to: Spotify, Amazon, Anchor Radio, on and on and on they go, right? All these different distribution channels that you get. So it does give you, content that can live much longer because you're not beholden to one algorithm necessarily. Sure, there's a couple that dominate and that you do have to optimize for. But at the same time, if Spotify were to go away tomorrow, there's still multiple other platforms that all of our podcasts are being distributed through, or whatever one of the platforms that you run into an issue with. I also think there's just something great about audio as a medium. I think it's a much more intimate medium. I think it really draws people in, and I think they almost develop these kind of parasocial relationships with their hosts where they really become like a trusted voice for listeners. And I think that's something that brands don't necessarily realize the impacts of that and tap into that enough, that level of trust where, I've seen multiple surveys that specifically ask that question in terms of the level of trust people have with hosts, and it's incredibly high, right? It's always kind of 80% plus in any survey I've seen.
Yeah, don't tell anyone about how good podcasting is. Don't let them
I try to tell everyone.
It is awesome. And in general, like a very simple thing to do, not necessarily easy, but just the format of audio can be so simple, yet can go so far. And it's a lot easier to trust someone after you've listened to their voice a million times for 30 minutes straight or something than it is to like peruse their other content or something.
And I think it's just such an enduring medium too. It's something people have always done, right? I mean, it goes back to sitting around campfires and telling stories, to radio shows, to now where you've got so many different ways that you can consume media, and audio has still remained, an incredibly powerful and popular way to consume media. And I think it always will. I think it's the way people love to consume information, and always will, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Okay. Those were all my questions for you. If you have anything else you want to scream about podcasting, or anything like that, or a hot take, or secretly your least favorite place you've traveled, if you really want to distill it, now's your time. Or if you don't have anything else to add, that's totally okay too. I won't tell anyone your least favorite place. I'm just kidding.
Well, one thing I will add is, first of all, we had a chance to meet briefly during TravelCon down in Arizona, which I thought was a great event. I don't know what your take on that was.
So fun.
That was my first one that I attended, and I was lucky enough to speak in a session there last year as well. But I think for people who are looking at, getting into whether it's podcasting or any type of travel content creating, like getting to some of those real world in-person events, I think hugely advantageous. I mean, very early in my podcasting career, I went to some of the early podcasting conferences that happened, and it just allowed me to level up so much quicker, getting around people who were already succeeding in an area where I was aspiring to do something, right? And getting a chance to hear from them firsthand and ask them questions. And I would just highly recommend. There's a lot of great events out there, but I thought TravelCon was a great one. TBEX is another great one that happens every year around the world. So for travel content creators, I would highly recommend those.
I know we can't forget the travel content creators should actually travel to events. They shouldn't
absolutely
travel for fun.
And don't forget, if you're generating some income out of your content, those events are a tax deduction too.
They are. Don't forget. Don't forget. Yeah, I thought TravelCon was so fun. And I hope there's another one to come. We'll see on all those details. But I did an episode shortly after it ended on just like, here are some takeaways from TravelCon, and that was super fun. So like even the conferences people go to, like it's just a gold mine of different content you can create from your experience there. So never.
This is your show. And another great example of, a great, thing for podcasting is that any area that you've got an interest in, there's a ton of great content there. And you've done a great job of aggregating together, some great content and great conversations around how to build out a travel content business. And I think you've got some great content in your back catalog that people should be checking out for sure.
Yeah, you heard it here first. That's right. No, this was super interesting and super fun. And I'm sure I will have more questions for you about podcasting, or even like a year check-in of like, okay, what was 2025? in the podcasting world? What was that? And what can we expect again in the future would be like a really interesting another take. But thanks for spending the time doing this. Where do you want people to find your podcast, your network? Where should we send them?
For sure. Well, our network is at voyescape.com. And that's where you'll find all of our travel podcasts from around the world and all of our hosts. My show is Travel in 10, as I say, 10-minute clips of things to see and do around the world. Me and my co-host, Tim Johnson, coming on every week with content around that. And, in addition to on our site, of course, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts.
Well, thank you so much, David, for joining us here to tell us a little bit more about not only podcasting and storytelling, but also what it looks like to be in a podcast network. I think that's so important. So I just want to reiterate how awesome I think podcasting is and how transformative it has been for my business. It has allowed me to connect with so many more people. It has brought in more business. And most importantly, I've been able to make so much networking and connections that outlast any sort of revenue I could ever bring in. So I so appreciate the time and effort that Marie, my producer from Your Girl Media, puts in every single week putting these episodes together for you. It is a lot to deal with me and my chaos, and she gets to see all of the things that don't make it into the episode, which is very brave of her, and I appreciate her for that. But it's been so easy, my podcasting journey, because I've worked with Marie from the beginning, and all I do is come up with content ideas, podcast ideas, record them, and then I'm literally going to hit this red button that says stop. And when I hit stop, I am going to message Marie to say, episode done, and I'm going to go walk away and do something else. And in a few days, this is going to appear on the internet. It's insane. And the best part is that she actually works with my VA, Glenn. And so he will go in and pull all the clips that you see on social media about the episode. So literally, I'm doing nothing but connecting with people I want to have on the show, connecting with my listeners, and bringing you epic content. And then they literally do the rest. It is so amazing. So if you are a content creator who really wants to find one of the easiest ways to spend 1 hour knocking out so many things in your content creator business, I highly recommend reaching out to my producer, Marie. Her email, Your Girl Media, will be below in the show notes for you, but please tell her I sent you. She's phenomenal. And even if you're like, I'm not sure if podcasting is for me in this moment, just get on a quick call with her, 15 minutes. She's actually so freaking cool. Like, if you don't know her, go and have a conversation with her. She's so freaking funny. Like, if you think this podcast is entertaining, you have to meet Marie. She's hilarious. So shout out Marie, and shout out to any of my listeners that's being you. Like, if you've made it this far, I really appreciate that. This software tells me I've been rambling for 2 minutes and 30 seconds, so I'm going to stop there. But I wish you the happiest of creating. Go start a podcast. Go yap and yap and yap. Your voice memo app can do this for you, and then send it to Marie, and she'll put it together for you. But until then, enjoy what you're doing. Happy whatever day. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. And I'll see you next week.
This podcast was produced by Your Girl Media.